The following program was made possible by the generosity of those who have determined to hold fast to the true Roman Catholic religion, as expounded by the Roman Catholic Church before the disasters of Vatican II and the so-called New Mass.
Hello and welcome to What Catholics Believe. I'm your host, Thomas Nagley. With me tonight is Father William Jenkins. He's a traditional Catholic priest and a member of the Society of St. Pius V. He's also the pastor of Immaculate Conception Church right here in Norwood, Ohio. Hello, Father. How are you?
Very fine, Tom. Thank you. Yourself?
Doing well, Father. Thanks for being here.
Well, that's mutual, Tom. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Father, any kind of update you can give us on the election? We're now into December, so it's just a matter of days, really, before we have the meeting of the Electoral College. Any kind of update you can give us on the happenings there with the...
Well, right now we're about 2 weeks away, right? December 8th, the electors have to be named by then, and December 14th is when they meet to choose the President of the United States of America, right?
Yep.
And what I find is interesting, something that most of our viewers are probably very well aware of, that the so-called battleground states, right? And we're talking about Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Nevada, right, is included in that now. I'm not sure who I'm leaving out there, but in any case, those are the states where the greatest fraud concentrated, where they had enormous, as they call them, dumps of votes for Biden after the ballot count was shut down during those few hours, but it wasn't shut down, right? There were still those kept behind to receive votes, right? Shipments of votes that were arriving in trucks for Joe Biden, and other votes that seemed to just materialize out of nowhere. So that when the counting officially resumed the next morning, suddenly the vote had changed dramatically, the vote totals, so that they showed Biden now not far behind President Trump in every one of those states, but now somewhat ahead and of him in every single one of those states. And so the fact is, Rudy Giuliani and Jenna Ellis, attorneys for the president, have spoken before the Senate in Pennsylvania and in Arizona, and the senators there, at least the Republican senators, are calling the vote into question. They don't want it certified from those states. They don't want the electors named for Joe Biden. They're willing to do legal battle, to prevent that from happening. And they are insisting that the Constitution be followed, the United States Constitution, to which they've all sworn an oath of fealty, and the Democrats as well as Republicans. And the United States Constitution calls for the legislatures of the states to have the ultimate power in naming the electors. And this has been done in the past. Unfortunately, in the course of time, it has almost been kind of by default left to others in the electoral process. But by the Constitution, it really comes down to the states. And if the last resort for resolving a disputed election, a presidential election, it revolves around the legislatures of the states voting. Each state gets one vote, as I understand it. This is what I'm told, anyway. And that this would fairly much assure the win by President Donald Trump, that he would be reelected and carry on the second term as president. I find it alarming, frankly, that so many Republican officials are either so weak or so actually, well, I guess it wouldn't be too much to say treasonous, because after all, That word has been used even by members of the intelligence community, saying that it is treason that is going on right now. Treason, a matter of a coup and trying to subvert the United States of America by this fraud. So I wouldn't be the first to use this term, but to see the Republicans betraying not only the president in this matter, but I'm afraid the country, as I see it anyway, is shameful. But it is not entirely unexpected, because time and time again, the left has resorted to just immoral means to get power and to retain power. And those who talked a good game of being very conservative, in the end, have just proved to be sleeper agents for the left. That's all they've done. All the way up, I think, to John Roberts, myself, Chief Justice of the United States. I consider him in that category too. So they're just waiting for the right moment, as operatives, to pull the rug out from under those who counted on them to stand up and resist the left. They betray them. And now we find those who are not willing to back down. And, it was feared that something had gone wrong with the Trump campaign, the Trump effort here, and when Sidney Powell was distanced from the Trump legal effort. But it seems that there was a reason for that, and that was not a setback in this effort but that Trump is not going to cede the presidency to what he considers to be a criminal element using fraud to try to gain power. It seemed to be a concession on his part when he told the woman who's the head of the GSA to go ahead and start the transition effort. But then it came to light that she was subject to so many threats against herself and her husband and her children and her pets to get her to begin the transition to a Biden government, that it appears now that President Trump was just doing that to protect her, but he wasn't making any concessions. And that would be a very gentlemanly thing to do, to see the situation she was in and out of compassion, let her start the process so that she would no longer be the target of the left's hatred and vindictiveness. Just today, it came out that Attorney General William Barr said that the Department of Justice can't really find any serious grounds for seeing fraud, at least not to an extent that it would change the outcome of the election. And that, again, might be considered to be a betrayal of sorts. But then there are those who would not be surprised to find William Barr and Durham, this great investigator of the Russia collusion hoax, who've just gathered all of this information and then basically done nothing but hold it and done little or nothing with it, which again is one of the reasons why we're in this fix right now. So a lot has to be overcome, a lot of opposition, even from our so-called friends, right? But by the grace of God and the power of prayer, it'll keep moving forward, because we pray for the fortitude of those who are willing to brave the hatred of the left in pursuing this and what they consider to be a matter of not only justice, but a matter of life and death for our own country right now. When you read about the chicanery, the manipulation of the vote by Dominion and ultimately by those who authored this whole assault, on our country and liberties and faith, going back to George Soros and his crowd, you realize over the years we've seen things happen that have been very, very hard to explain. A few years ago, we saw the abdication of Ireland. Ireland was faced with these, I guess they were referendums, I don't know, but to approve homosexual marriage, to approve abortion, things that were totally out of character for Catholic Ireland. And by a 2-to-1 margin, supposedly, the Irish voted in favor of homosexual marriage and so on. And you ask, how could this be? I mean, we know the Novus Ordo is a poisonous, corrupting influence. But had the Irish so completely lost their faith that they would approve this monstrosity, this perversion by a 2-to-1 margin? And then you find out that Soros poured, well, through his, spin-off companies and so on, and his agents, millions of dollars into Ireland to hire agents. And it makes you wonder, how was this vote taken back then? We know now how the communist Maduro came to power. We know how Chavez came to power in Venezuela. And we see that the same instruments are being used now around the world to secure power by fraudulent means, by the appearance of popular choice, and yet contrary to the will of the people, securing power, how the leftists are rising into power by laws, lies, and fraud and deceit. And we see what happened in Venezuela, and it makes us wonder, well, what did they do in Ireland now? Was Ireland stolen, basically, by the left? I think so. I'm more inclined to think that this was another one of Soros's dirty tricks. And that there are many good people in Ireland who did not want this, but that they were basically, essentially, what would you say, kidnapped or, by leftist lies. So people are catching on to this with George Soros, though, how he operates, using his money to subvert and suborn. But now we see the effort in our own country, but the amazing thing is that now it's been uncovered, now it's been exposed, and now those who have exposed it are willing to fight this out. We haven't seen that before, but this is something new, and I think the reason is because the power of prayer. I think the power of prayer is fueling this, that now there is exposure of the evil, and now there is a willingness to fight it, even by people you wouldn't ordinarily expect, people you'd think were very worldly. But suddenly, if nothing else, they find the virtue of piety toward their country, right, and patriotism. So in any case, we have to keep praying, Tom. That's the key. Prayer is what is fueling the exposure of this evil and the will to resist it. So we have to continue praying, and we have to redouble those prayers, and also take the initiative and support those who are willing to fight this, and because they have to brave a lot of fury, from the left. It takes a lot of courage to do so, a lot of fortitude. That's going to be the result of grace. So let's keep up that good fight, intensify it even more, and not let them do it. There are more legal efforts. The courts keep shooting down Trump's legal efforts. I'm sure he's not surprised by this at all. He knows what he's dealing with here, okay? He knows he's dealing with years and years of manipulation and years of subversion by the Obama administration and others before him. And so he realizes he's dealing with what they call deep state. And but he seems to be making moves now to try to neutralize them so that they cannot subvert his efforts. Well, we hope. Look, there are people who are saying, look, Donald Trump was born of the same mold, okay? Came from the same mold as the rest of them, and is supported, certainly in his early years, was supported by the same people who are behind all the others. And that may well be true, for all I know. There are people who know a lot more about it than I, who have studied a lot more and have a lot more information. But the fact is that outwardly he represents something that is quite different from what the leftists are representing. And the very fact that we will stand for the good things, that some would say that he represents falsely. They say this is a charade. Well, they say that. But that doesn't change the fact that we have to stand for the good wherever it appears, and uphold that. And in this contest, there's no doubt that in so many ways what Donald Trump alleges that he stands for is on the side of the angels. And all we can do, basically, is try to lend our support to that. Hopefully, the grace of God will do the rest. And I mean, I know the grace of God will do the rest if we do what we're supposed to be doing. So, and we'll convert the right hearts.
Okay.
To move forward. So anyway, we're still very much heavily engaged in the battle. We still need the prayers. We're still going to have the public rosaries here in Cincinnati, and I encourage people to do so elsewhere, all over the country.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds like a plan. Well, Father, we had a few emails that I would like to read to you today. Several of these are along the same theme, Father, about just in general leaving the Novus Ordo and seeking your advice with that dilemma. So one of our viewers says that he says, I'm a practicing Catholic and I love listening to your programs. If I lived nearby, I would want to attend services at your parish. My only concern would be regarding the validity and legitimacy of the services, as it is my understanding that the Society of St. Pius V is not recognized by Rome. So as much as I love the orthodoxy and wisdom of Father Jenkins, I'm afraid I'd be better off attending the hideous Jesuit parish 2 blocks away from me in order to remain faithful to Holy Mother Church. Father, how do you respond to this dilemma?
Well, it may appear to be a dilemma. It really isn't, though. To say, it's sad. It is very sad that he says, I'd be better off to attend the hideous Jesuit parish 2 blocks away. Yes. The question is it Catholic? Is anything about it Catholic? Does it represent the Catholic faith? Is it true to the Catholic faith? Do they have Catholic worship there? True Catholic worship? Do they practice Catholic morality and insist on Catholic morality? Are they there to save souls? Any number of things that, are essential to something being Catholic, But you see, this is what Satan has done. Archbishop Lefebvre stated very well. He says, the master stroke of Satan, obedience, to get people to betray the faith in the name of obedience. And, one can't help but think back to the permanent instruction of the Alta Vendita that was a Masonic document, captured in the Masonic lodges of northern Italy in the early 1800s, which outlined the plan to infiltrate the church and to seize control of the papacy. And through the voice of the papacy, which everyone would think it was the papacy, is the document itself, the Masons actually said that people would be following the Masonic lodges and the orders of Masonry while they were thinking that they were following the directions of the Vicar of Christ on earth. He actually says that. They will be following us. They will be following the Masonic program. They'll be fighting for the Masonic cause while they think they are actually following the voice of the Vicar of Christ. And, that's very telling. There are those who would say, that's another one of those conspiracy theories, QAnon and all the rest of the 1800s. And it was Pope Pius IX who ordered that document published. He's the one who insisted that may be made known, that this was the Masonic plan. So one cannot simply dismiss that and say, that's just, some kind of hysterical imaginings of conspiratorialist type of thought. It's not that way at all. The Church herself had made it known to us what the Masonic plan was. And so we have that happening right now. I mean, those who are following Francis right now are actually following the New World Order. They're following the voice, one of the primary voices for the Great Reset, the New World Order, the permanent instruction of the Masons, and they're following the Masonic Revolution, and they're a party to it. And that's what this gentleman would be doing by going down the block to the Jesuit, the hideous Jesuit church, he says. He would be part and parcel to the Masonic Revolution, masquerading under the guise of the Catholic Church. I mean, go back. I challenge all of our readers to go back and read the text of the permanent instruction of the Alta Vendita. We can actually reference it on our What Catholics Believe website. If we haven't already, we should, right? And so that they know what the Masonic plan is to subvert the church from the early 1800s even until this day, and see if they don't recognize then what happened in Vatican II and what has happened with the election of John the 23rd, what happened with Francis, with the accession of Francis, right, as the supreme pontiff of the new order, because that's exactly what he is. He's the Pope of the new order. So here the question is, under the illusion and delusion of following the authority of the church, what is going to actually be complicit in attacking the church, subverting the church, and actually even falsifying the church, and supporting the Masonic plan of leading the Catholic people to follow the Masonic Revolution and to lend their support for the Masonic Revolution against the church, even as they claim they're being obedient. This was Monsignor Lefebvre's great lament, that Satan would use obedience to subvert the church. And you know, this is exactly what Joe Biden, as far as I'm concerned, what Joe Biden is doing now. Saying, well, we have this vote, and I mean, the American people have to accept this vote. I mean, this was a vote of the people. And, you know, I'm the president-elect now, and people have to get with us whether they like it or not. We should all come together as good Americans and accept that choice. And those who realize it's a fraud will not do that, will not give in to it. But people have to begin to realize that Vatican II was a modernist fraud. And Archbishop Vigano has done everything that practically said as much. And yet, the religion that came out of Vatican II, that's the Novus Ordo, he hasn't entirely rejected yet. But ultimately, I mean, he's going to have to decide it's one way or the other. It is to be utterly rejected. As long as the Novus Ordo can keep gentlemen like this, who evidently still have the faith, mm-hmm. As long as they can keep him in tow, as long as they can keep him in line, then again they will have their way, and they will do enormous damage. And this is why they succeeded, precisely because of that kind of thinking. Well, I have to stay with the church no matter what. That's what they, and even you know, when the church obviously is not giving you the voice of the shepherd, they still say, well, I mean, I have to stay with it no matter what, regardless. Even if the Pope's not Catholic, I have to follow him wherever he goes. Well, he's leading souls to hell is where he's leading people right now. This is where Francis is leading souls to hell, and he's leading the entire world into the Great Reset of the New World Order.
Yep. Father, I'd like to read another email. It's very similar along the same lines, but I thought very instructive again. So this is from a young viewer who is a recently converted Catholic, passionate for sacred tradition. He says, I've listened to your videos for the past week, and the arguments are persuasive. However, they ask, how can it be possible for the faithful to seemingly have to make the choice between schism and heresy? I read your writings on the website about union with Rome, but I can't see anywhere in the tradition of the Church where Rome is considered separate from the Roman Pontiff. Moreover, Vatican II is so ambiguous and ultimately devoid of meaning that it seems safer to just stay within the post-conciliar Church and wait for a pious pope to come by the power of the Holy Spirit and clarify Vatican II in such a way that it lines up with pre-conciliar tradition. Yet such a course of action also seems cowardly and naive. So, Father, how would you respond to this line of questioning?
To stay in the Novus Ordo and practice the Novus Ordo, which is not the Catholic religion, waiting for some pious pope to come in to actually restore Catholicism, right, and to restore the practice of the Catholic religion, is suicidal. It's spiritually dishonest. It is condoning sacrilege and blasphemy. And that's what the Novus Ordo really is all about. You might say that Vatican II is so ambiguous that, it has no real meaning. It does have meaning. And those who were there and those who voted on those documents, they knew what those documents meant, and they came back and they put it into practice. And that's what we call the Novus Ordo, and it's not the Catholic religion. No, it is not safe to be there. It's exactly where you should not be. And it is the first major step toward a one-world religion, which is the religion of the Antichrist. And no Catholic should be on board with this, and no Catholic should be supporting it. Certainly no Catholic should be practicing it. So it just amazes me that people can't see that, and that they somehow can justify this in their conscience as being, I guess, in their own minds, maybe the lesser of two evils to go along with that. I mean, well, the very fact what this young gentleman says here, and I thank God for the grace he's giving him. I mean, at least he's giving him the grace to see there's something wrong with it.
Yeah.
At least that. But he's got to find his way through this what this moral dilemma, as it's called, that I have to choose between schism and heresy. Now think about that. Is that really possible? That's a real dilemma, or is that an illusion? Is that the illusion that the Novus Ordo wants you to have? Is that their mind bending and their mind control to make you think that you have to choose between schism and heresy now? And if you don't follow us, you're going to be schismatic. But if you do follow us, well, we'll lead you into heresy. This is just nothing, again, but smoke and mirrors thrown up by the Novus Ordo. It's impossible that Christ should give us a dilemma like that. Christ does not do that. This is the work of the devil to propose such a dilemma to people, to make everybody have to choose between schism and heresy. I mean, as soon as the gentleman wrote that, he should have immediately realized, well, that can't be right. Christ can't have put me in that situation. If anything, the modernists have put me in that situation. Francis is putting me in that position. The devil's putting me in that position. But it's certainly not Jesus Christ who's put me in that position. And the fact is that if I choose heresy, I'm automatically choosing schism anyway, right? I mean, you can't be a heretic without being a schismatic at the same time, in the sense that you can't be a heretic without denying the authority of the Roman Pontiff, right? He was actually teaching the faith. So if the Roman Pontiff is saying you have to be faithful to me, and the only way you can be faithful to me is by somehow condoning or at least tolerating heresy, right away you have your answer right there. And the answer is, this is not the authority of Christ demanding that I do this, period. And so this, if I decide to choose heresy to avoid schism, I'm choosing both. And if I choose the faith, always, if this is the choice that's given me, if I choose the faith, I can't be choosing schism, right? If I choose the faith over heresy, by definition, I can't be choosing schism, because there's no authority on the face of the earth or in heaven itself that could command me to choose heresy. So how would I be defying the authority of Christ in choosing the faith over heresy? You see what I mean, Tom? Yeah. The whole idea is just completely outrageously nonsensical. It doesn't make any sense. It's an illusion and delusion of the of Satan himself. He's the great illusionist and delusionist who puts people on the horns of this, apparent dilemma that Satan himself has set up. But it's no dilemma at all, not for a Catholic. The Catholic sees right through that.
Right.
It's based on lies. And I just pray that that young gentleman finds his way through, because I'm afraid he's caught in that. He's caught in that smoke and mirrors of the devil. And I'm sure that our Lord will show him the way out of that, of that illusion.
Well, Father, here's yet another one that's similar that I'd like to read to you. We've had this email for a while. This viewer says, I've been watching your program for a few months now, and last year, Father, he says, I went through RCIA at my Novus Ordo church before I knew anything about traditional Catholicism or even much about Christianity. He says, I attend Mass regularly, but after watching what Catholics believe, I'm wondering if I made a mistake in being confirmed in the Novus Ordo. There is no traditional Mass near me. It would require traveling hundreds and hundreds of kilometers. Should I stop attending the Novus Ordo Mass? Should I stop and participate in what Catholics believe remotely? I did order the Baltimore Catechism because I've read that is a reliable catechism. So hopefully I'm on the right path, at least as far as that is concerned. So thank you in advance, Father, and what kind of advice could you offer here?
Well, there was a book written in the early years of these changes called The Great Sacrilege, right? It's written by Father James Wathen. Right. Father Wathen himself had kind of a colorful career. Again, it seemed always trying to reconcile the revolution with, went off with a false group of the Knights of Malta and wound up... I guess in the Fideite camp and so on. Excuse me.
Father.
But one of the seminal books in this whole study of the Novus Ordo Mass liturgy was The Great Sacrilege, and it was about the new Mass. And to this day, I mean, that book is a very, very good analysis of the new Mass. Yeah. I wouldn't say it's definitive. There have been a lot of other books that have been written. But they're building on the same premise, that the new Mass is a sacrilege. And therefore, I would tell this gentleman, yes, stay away from the new Mass. Do not practice the new religion. You'd be better off, as Catholics were in missionary times, if there was no real Catholic Mass to go to, they certainly wouldn't go down to the Episcopalian Church or the Presbyterian Church or the Jewish synagogue. Or they wouldn't decide, well, I guess I'll have to worship as a Lutheran this Sunday because there is no real Catholic Mass available to me. Well, that's absolutely forbidden by the faith, right? And so, yes, he should actually stay away from the new Mass and the entire Novus Ordo. And if the only way he can follow a true Mass is online, then that'd be better for him to unite spiritually with that. And if he has to travel, he mentions kilometers. Is he in this country or?
I'm not sure about
else? Well, anyway,
I assume not, but
but if even if he can only get to Mass once a month or once every 2 or 3 months to receive the sacraments,
be worth
that's what he should do if he wants to be a Catholic, and a traditional Catholic.
Father,
he should avoid the Novus Ordo entirely.
That's one objection that we very frequently see pop up in our email inboxes from people similar to this who say that they love everything you say, they want to be traditional Catholic, but there's no society or congregation of St. Pius V Church near them. There's no traditional options near them, so they say, I guess I'm just stuck going to the Novus Ordo. Father, is it possible to practice the traditional Catholic faith even if you're not, let's say, attending a traditional Mass every single week? Is this kind of the only requirement to practice a traditional Catholic faith that you attend?
So much of the earth was mission territory. Our own United States of America here was mission territory until the 1920s sometime. And so there were large areas of the United States when Catholics did not have access to the Holy Mass every Sunday and Holy Day. They might have Mass once a month. And a missionary priest would pull through town and administer the sacraments for them. And we're kind of back in those times now.
Yeah.
So by all means, I mean, there was a 200-year span when the Japanese did not have any access to the Catholic faith at all, to practicing. In terms of having the Mass and the sacraments available to them, they continued to be Catholics, believe as Catholics, practice as Catholics as well as they were able. And when missionaries returned, they were still Catholic. They still had the Catholic faith. But if you go to the Novus Ordo, you won't be. If you look to the Novus Ordo to be your faith, then your new faith will be modernism, and your new religion will be the new order. And you're being basically led by the nose right into the New World Order. That's where the Novus Ordo is leading. The Novus Ordo religion is leading souls in that direction. So, when we have discussions like this, what comes to mind is the little beast in the apocalypse with the lamb's horns, which the commentators tell us symbolizes ecclesiastical, something church-wise, something having to do with religion, and how this is the figure who calls all mankind to worship the beast. But again, he is regarded as a religious figure doing that. And seeing what Francis has come out with, I mean, this man is actually the religious counterpart of George Soros in my book. He's kind of like the anti-Catholic answer, the religious figure that is a counterpart to George Soros himself, calling all to worship the beast of the Novus Ordo, the New Order. He is pushing and pushing, and as time goes on, more and more vocally, more and more openly pushing the program of the Great Reset. All of the communist Marxist program. So I think people are going to they're going to have to compromise their faith, compromise their loyalty to our Lord, in order to stay within the Novus Ordo. Eventually, they're going to have to give it up entirely. The Novus Ordo, the New World Order, will require them ultimately to make the one final choice to renounce Christ entirely. But that's the direction that the Novus Ordo is taking them right now, to renounce Christ.
Well, Father, another email here. This one's a little different, but similar here. It says that I've heard Father Jenkins say that while he does not believe Francis is the Pope, he also does not believe in including Francis' name in the canon of the Mass. Father Jenkins, you also acknowledge that you don't have the right to make the judgment for anyone else, or say that those who disagree with you are not Catholics. However, you've also said before that you would deny the sacraments to people who attend Fraternity of St. Peter chapels. What would be the reasoning behind this, and where would your authority come from to say that people who attend Fraternity of St. Peter Masses or other indult chapels are not true Catholics?
Well, as I say, I don't have the authority to pronounce dogmatically for everyone in the world that Francis is not a pope. I have my theological opinion on the subject. I think it's a matter of logic. And if a party disagrees with that, I might think that they're illogical and might accuse them of being, illogical. But I can't say that they're non-Catholic and that they're spouting some kind of heresy, right? some denial of the faith. But the fact is that, as I'm sure our writer would say, the people have to, under the circumstances today, follow their own conscience and bend the basis of what they believe is the truth. And so if I am going to be convinced that the Novus Ordo, the new order that came out of Vatican II, is actually a false religion, and is not only a false religion, but is the false religion, which is the anti-Catholicism, which is meant to replace Catholicism in the minds and hearts of purportedly Catholic people, then I have to act consistently with that. And so if I have somebody coming from the Fraternity of St. Peter saying, I want to receive the sacraments from you, I mean, I would have to say, I would have to say several things to them. I'd have to say, first of all, the only way you could, in conscience, receive or justify in conscience receiving sacraments from me would be if you betrayed what you claim to believe is true. Because you claim to be under the authority and to acknowledge the authority of Francis as the Supreme Pontiff, and yet in coming to me to receive the sacraments, you would be disobeying him, who tells you you cannot do that in good conscience. So how can you justify that? You have to be violating your conscience, even in saying, I want to come to receive the sacraments from you, and saying to me, how dare I refuse them, right? If you came to me and said, I want to receive the sacraments, I'd have to warn you that you could not in good conscience do that based upon your own premises, right? Your own principles. But I would say this also beyond that, you know, in refusing you the sacraments, the traditional sacraments, I'm simply saying that I believe that you are, however, mistakenly practicing a non-Catholic religion, and that you are actually supporting and propagandizing for a non-Catholic faith, modernism, trying to make the impossible seem not only possible, but to make it sound like it's real, that you can reconcile Catholicism with modernism. And you can't. Pope Pius X said it's impossible to reconcile these two things. And I agree with St. Pius X. So in other words, I believe what you're doing is actually contrary to the faith and is actually attacking the faith that you think that you're supporting and you think that you're promoting, but you're not. And I'm not making a judgment of your conscience. I'm not accusing you of being guilty of anything, but I think you're wrong. And I have to follow my conscience, not yours. I cannot follow your conscience instead of mine. I have to follow my conscience in what I believe is right. And in denying you Holy Communion, that's exactly what I have to do. So if you want me to acknowledge that you may be subjectively convinced that you're right, and that you thinking that this is the right thing to do, that this is what you should do subjectively according to what you believe is the right thing, then you have to give me that same benefit. That this is what I believe is the right thing to do. And I have good reasons for thinking so, for believing that. And as long as I do it, this is how I'm going to act on it. And it is on the basis of that I have no choice but to say, no, I cannot give you Holy Communion, this Mass, not only for the sake of my conscience, but for the sake of yours. You know, it's troubling, Tom. You know, you have somebody come to you from like St. Peter, something like Fraternity of St. Peter, and they don't see any problem. They don't see any problem with receiving communion at Immaculate Conception, or going to the Society of St. Pius X, or going to Fraternity of St. Peter, or going to some conservative Novus Ordo. It's all one big bailiwick as far as they're concerned. But the only way they can think that is if they've completely abandoned the whole idea, well, of the church, the integrity of the church. Just, go everywhere, as long as it fits your lifestyle or your particular taste. You like the flavor of tradition, so I'll just go wherever they appear to be traditional. I've had, I have occasionally people come from the Novus Ordo and say, well, we're here and we're going to come up and receive communion. And I say, well, do you recognize the authority of the Novus Ordo bishop? Do you think that's the authority of the Catholic Church here in Cincinnati? And they say, oh, yeah, we do. We recognize that authority. Do you realize that the bishop here, whom you recognize as the authority of Christ in this diocese, tells you cannot come here in good conscience? Oh, yeah. Do you realize the bishop wouldn't want you here? That actually your own parish priest would tell you, don't go there, you can't receive the sacraments there. That would be wrong. That would be sinful. They still believe in it. Oh, yeah. But that's okay. Now, how do you reconcile that with Catholic thinking? How can you even regard those people as Catholics? if they say they recognize that authority, but who cares? They're the schismatics. They are really the textbook definition of schismatics. And saying, yes, we recognize this the authority of Christ, and we don't care. It doesn't matter. We can go where we want, do what we want. But that's Novus Ordo thinking there.
Yeah.
You know? It's kind of odd, you know, the people who've written here are the ones, they're so concerned about authority. The Novus Ordo hierarchy isn't concerned about that at all. As far as they're concerned, you don't have to be Catholic to save your soul, if they even believe it anymore. You don't have to practice the Catholic faith to save you. You can be a good Lutheran, a good Presbyterian, a good Jew, a good Muslim, and you still save your soul. God wills all these religions in their mind. So why on earth would a tradition or a conservative Novus Ordo be so concerned about authority when the very people whose authority they claim to be concerned about couldn't care less about it? Right? It means nothing to them. Follow your imam, Francis would say, right? Save your soul, right? Follow your imam. Follow your rabbi, right? You can save your soul just as well that way.
Even an atheist. Yeah,
even an atheist. You don't have to follow any authority. Even atheists can be saved. Francis said so. So here you have the anomaly of these Novus Ordo conservatives saying, oh, we've got to follow the authority of the Holy Father. The Holy Father doesn't even believe in his own authority. The only time he believes in his authority when he thinks he's going to have to impress you and make you do what he wants. Otherwise, he's up there palling around with the imam and the rabbi as though they're his equals. I mean, here's Paul VI takes off the ring of the fisherman, puts it on the finger of the Archbishop of Canterbury. That's what he thinks of the authority of the papacy. And so it is such an anomaly, a contradiction for people to be saying, slavishly pretending that it's the way it was, you know, before Vatican II, as though this authority really means something to these people. It means nothing to Francis. He has redefined the papacy. As far as he's concerned, any imam or any rabbi or minister has enough authority from Christ that you can go and you can save your soul with them too. That's Francis's way of thinking. You know, this is his concept of the papacy. So I'm just telling people that if they're following the Novus Ordo, they're not following Christ. They have to come to that realization. They have to come back to follow the true Catholic faith, the true Catholic religion, as the Church has taught it for all of those centuries and centuries. The faith for which martyrs have given their lives, the faith that the fathers and doctors of the Church have written about for all those centuries. It is unchanged. It is exactly what it is. And the fact, you know, that these two gentlemen wrote as they did, they recognize that fact. They like the orthodoxy, one says at Immaculate Conception, and they see, you know, in choosing to avoid choice between heresy and schism, well, you know, the only way I can avoid heresy is if I come to the traditional faith, but then I'd be in schism. But if I don't become schismatic and I'm loyal to Francis, but then I basically have to choose heresy. But they're both saying the same thing. This is where the faith is, in its integrity. But that's where Christ is. And they may say, well, what about the saying, you know, where Peter is, there is the church. Where is Christ, right? There is Christ. Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, where Peter is, there is the faith, but we have to understand that where the faith is, that there is Peter. Where the faith is, there is Peter. And if whoever is there is not with the faith, he's not with Peter, and he's not with Christ either. Mm-hmm. The faith is the reference point. The faith is the reference point. What makes Peter the rock? He is faithful. He is the rock and stands for the faith. And the moment he fails to stand for the faith, he's not the rock anymore. Right? Mm-hmm. So, anyway, I wish people could just see their way through the fog, the smoke, the mirrors of modernism and the illusionists and the deceiver, and just come to realize I have to hold fast to the faith, hold fast to the faith, hold fast to the faith, no matter what. And as long as I'm doing that, I can't be schismatic. It's impossible. Impossible. I have to choose the faith.
That's right. Well, Father, I had several more emails that I wanted to read.
Sure.
If you're up for it. Sure, we had...
Well, I guess so. We could try to... You answer them in our usual short, succinct
Well,
style.
one Father that I wanted to mention was one of our viewers read in and said that they have noticed that many Catholic colleges and even high schools were using the literary works of Flannery O'Connor, the author. So what did you think of that, Father? Did you have any impression of her, any impression of her works?
Well, I'm no Flannery O'Connor scholar. I'm no aficionado of Flannery O'Connor. I have an impression of her from what I have read, though. So I actually consulted our own English department here at Immaculate Conception to see if my own impressions were accurate. And I must say that our English department did confirm my impressions.
Good.
I mean, Flannery O'Connor, wanted to be a Catholic artist. She really, in her own mind, she positioned herself that way. That was what her goal was, to be a Catholic artist and to reflect the Catholic faith. And especially in terms of, she used to read St. Thomas Aquinas every day and try to actually incorporate theology into her writings. And she said that you can't really be a novelist or a writer of stories without a theological background. She didn't think it'd be possible, really, because she always saw there had to be some moral behind it to make it even worth writing. But the trouble was that she chose this Christian realism genre to write from. And as we know, I mean, the Christian part is fine. The realism part in the world today, things are rather distorted. And there's a tendency to get very grossly material. And so in her writings, I mean, she would have these rather grotesque characters struggling with moral issues, dilemmas even, and doing strange things, even very violent things, And unfortunately, those who are reading her now seem to be more impressed with the weirdness of the characters, the grotesqueness of the characters and the mentalities they meet with, and the violence they meet with in her writings, than they are with the actual theological meaning and the moral. But she herself realized that it's hard to understand the meaning, what she's getting at. And so, as I was, was explained to me, and this confirmed my own impressions, that you almost need someone to explain to you what she's trying to tell you. And this is not healthy for Catholic art any more than it is healthy in Catholic theology. I mean, when you have modernism, you read modernism. You read it like an encyclical by Francis or even John Paul II, and he's using all this language, and you need someone to tell you, well, this is what he's saying. And this is not a strength of modernism. It's part of the deception and the poison of modernism. Well, when you have a Catholic artist who, despite whatever good intentions they have, you need some kind of a guidebook to figure out, okay, what do they mean by this and what do they mean by that? So you don't go off the rails and get the wrong understanding. That's a flaw. That is a flaw in the methodology, whatever it is. And I think that's true of Flannery O'Connor. And I'm not the only one either who sees that. I can see why the moderns today, the modernists even would go for that. There's every indication that Flannery O'Connor herself was very orthodox in her belief until later on. I mean, she's known for actually rising up in a literary meeting in New York when some fallen away Catholic was attacking the Catholic belief in the Blessed Sacrament and defending it in a forthright and very decisive way, explaining the true Catholic teaching on the real presence of our Lord in the Blessed Sacrament. And she was a real, shall I say, warrior for the faith in that setting. About not only the theology of the Blessed Sacrament, but also the significance of it for the life of the soul and the life of the Church and so on. So there's no doubt that she had a real sincerity in her belief. But later on in life, she seemed to be becoming more and more enamored with Teilhard de Chardin. And that's the kiss of death for Catholic faith. She never seemed... Her interest in Teilhard de Chardin probably came from more of a mystical bent, because, evolutionary, mystical evolutionary thought had a hold over a whole, group of people, and literary people back then. And evidently Flannery O'Connor was one of those. He was kind of taken in by that. In fact, I understand the last collection of stories she wrote was entitled that all that rises must converge, and that comes directly out of Teilhard de Chardin, because she was impressed by his thinking. And it's a false mysticism, but it can have a veneer of Catholicism, even having a certain odor of Catholicism to deceive. And that's what modernism is. I mean, it's just pure deception. So evidently Flannery O'Connor was drawn into that. So one has to be very wary of later writings. But I was told that if you read the letters that she writes, it's where you see her faith expressed most clearly. In her letters, as opposed to her literary works, in her letters you do see that she really had the Catholic faith and a love for the faith too. Is she the best artist to express the faith? Evidently not. Evidently, what does St. Thomas Aquinas say in the Scholastics? Art is the idealization of the real and the realization of the ideal. But she seems to have missed that point somewhere along the line. In terms of her Christian realism, it seems to descend into the gutter. And you're reading about what's happening in the gutter there. She's not idealizing it, and raising it up and elevating it. She seems to be trying to find Catholic morality in that. And it just brings you more into the mindset of Francis, who says he wants a dirty church. He wants the smell of the sheep. He wants the grime and the grit, and he wants to get into the gutter. And, I can't help but think that despite whatever good intentions she had, that Flannery O'Connor kind of agreed with Francis in that. That's where she takes her readers. So that's not idealizing the real or realizing the ideal. Okay. Anyway, so personally, I think there are a lot better things to read. Honestly, there are really good Catholic authors. I mean, Monsignor Robert Hugh Benson has got to be at the top of the list. So if one had a choice between reading the works of Monsignor Robert Hugh Benson or reading the works of Flannery O'Connor, there'd be no choice there, obviously. The works of Monsignor Benson are so far superior. Yeah. They're elevating. They're inspiring, right? And that's where we should go. I just wish all of the works of Monsignor Benson were available. But I think they're too Catholic to, achieve a great deal of universal popularity, because I think many people wouldn't be able to understand them simply because they're so worldly and shallow in their thinking. And Monsignor Benson's, he writes these historical novels, which give a very powerful insight into what was going on, like during the Reformation in England. But again, to understand it through the eyes of a Catholic and the Catholic faith, the Catholic Church, you have to have the faith to appreciate that. But that's why anyone who does have the faith should be reading those writings of Monsignor Benson.
Yep. Well, thank you for that, Father. Thank you for everything. I appreciate your time. And
well, things are hanging in the balance right now, and people are very nervous about that time. It's not just some politics. It's the question of the kingship of Christ, our Lord, and whether there's any room in the world for our faith and our hope and our love for our Lord Jesus Christ. That's really what is hanging in the balance right now. As I started to say earlier, it scares me when people are saying, well, Trump is preparing to run for the year 2024. Well, I would say, think back to Venezuela, when Chavez was running. I mean, imagine the time when they said, Chavez used this fraud of this Dominion, software and all the Dominion machines to steal the election and to basically steal the country of Venezuela. And now looking back, what would you have said to somebody who said, well, they stole the election this time, but the next time we have an election, I'm going to be ready. Well, we saw what happened to that. You can't get them out of power now. Once they get in, they're not going to give up that power. Everything they do is about securing that power and making sure no one can challenge them. Who in Venezuela can challenge Maduro right now? Who would even dare try at this point, right? And I'm afraid it's going to be that way here. I think if they pull off this fraudulent hijacking of the entire country through this fake election, that they are not going to give anyone an opportunity to challenge their authority. The left understands what's at stake here, all right? So this talk about Trump thinking he's going to run in the year 2024, I really don't think that's Trump's thinking. I think that's the leftists floating that idea. Well, let's just look forward to 2024. By that time, they'll be ready, and we'll really show them, and we'll carry the day, right? And you know what? I think that's propaganda. No, I think with many of the battle has to be fought here and now. Whether the American people and their vote has any place anymore in our republic, or whether we've had the last election, true election, years ago, and it's over, essentially. There are those who actually are coming to the realization that if they carry off this heist, it's over. And I don't think they're exaggerating. I think they're quite right. The encouraging thing that I find, though, is that I don't believe that Joe Biden and his Catholicism, his species of Catholicism, got 80 million votes from the American people. I don't believe that. I think that's a bald-faced lie. And I do think that what Joe Biden stands for, with his abortion and perversions and those so far, were resoundingly rejected. And the socialism, whatever he calls it, I mean, he is the man they've got marked for, and Kamala Harris, to bring the United States into the New World Order, lock, stock, and barrel for the Great Reset. They're counting on him. And Trump is the one they know will resist them, and he's standing in their way. A lot of people are coming to understand that now. So they realize, as the left is all in on this, well, we have to be all in too. We have to be up to the fight. But for us, the fight is not for mere politics. The fight is for civilization. And at this point, what's left of Christian civilization? We are in it for fighting for our lives, our souls, fighting for our faith, fighting for the church, fighting for our Lord Jesus Christ. If we fight the fight for that reason, we're invincible. But we have to be faithful and true to these things too. You understand. I think you even agree.
I think so, Father.
I think Charlotte would agree.
I think so. Yes,
Okay, well, that's good enough for me. So,
sounds good.
so pray the rosary, but then if God is prompting you to take action that is consonant with your faith, you have to be ready to rise to the occasion too.
Absolutely. Thank you, Father. God bless you.
God bless your town.
Yeah.
And God bless the United States of America.
That's right.
First of all, by showing his mercy and purifying this country.
Thanks to all of our viewers for watching this episode of What Catholics Believe. Until next time, we ask that you all remember the words of Our Lady at Fatima, to consecrate yourselves and your families to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, and to pray and do penance. Thank you, and God bless you.